All right, let's discuss all the breaking news up on Capitol Hill with Congressman Tony Gonzalez. He's a Texas Republican congressman. Thanks so much for joining us. I know, like all of us, you just heard the House Speaker Mike Johnson place the blame on Democrats for the potential of a government shutdown should today's spending bill fail to pass. The clock is clearly ticking. First, there's still a question if Johnson has enough Republican votes. Do you plan to vote, first of all, in support of this spending bill, this CR, this continuing resolution?
Yeah, good morning, Wolf, and thank you for having me. There is not a lawmaker up here that likes CRs. All of us have voted against them. All of us have voted for them at different periods. But governing is messy. And what I appreciate about President Trump is his willingness to listen to members of Congress and work towards a solution. There were two things in particular that I was advocating for. You know, I spent 20 years in the military. I retired a Navy Master Chief. One of those in this bill is the largest pay increase for junior enlisted service members, E1 through E5, in the history of our nation. It's long time we get our service members off food stamps. This bill is going to do that. Another thing that I'd have advocated for was increased funding for border security. And just when the administration is getting going, I think now's not the time to pull the rug from underneath the administration. I was able to fly on Air Force 2 with the Vice President to the border this past week and saw firsthand the Vice President is very influential in allowing people to understand what the administration is trying to do. For those reasons, I do plan to vote in favor of this CR and to keep the ball rolling. There's a lot more discussions that need to be had, but I think it's a positive direction that the administration is going in.
There's a question about some of your Republican colleagues who are planning on voting against it, for example, Thomas Massie. And you heard President Trump now threaten to go after him, this Republican congressman, if he votes against this continuing resolution. Are you hearing from your Republican colleagues in the House that are concerned if they vote against the CR, the continuing resolution, the president will go after them and seek to primary them in the upcoming midterm elections?
No, I think it's less of that. Look, members were elected to represent their districts, and that's exactly what we do. In the same breath, President Trump, in just a very short period of time, his policies are working. And now is not the time to cut funding. Now is the time to make sure that they have all the resources they need. Now, Congress should have we're an equal branch of government. We need to have a seat at the table. And I think it's a positive thing to have this dialogue, to have this back and forth. But I also think it's important to the American people. We need to deliver. Enough with the talk, enough with the blame game. We need to deliver for the American people. President Trump is doing that. Congress needs to come alongside and make sure it's constructive, that we're having a dialogue and making sure that we are indeed getting that agenda done.
All right, let's get some Democratic reaction to all the things that are unfolding up on Capitol Hill. Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas is joining us here in the Situation Room. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. You heard the House Speaker. I assume you heard what he said. He's basically blaming the Democrats, people like you, if this continuing resolution is defeated in the House later today.
Listen, he can't blame me for not wanting to be his doormat or for the Democrats not wanting to be their doormat. I mean, all we consistently hear from them is they have this mandate that the American people gave them. Well, I am saying that I have a mandate from my district, and it does not involve cutting Medicaid, cutting Medicare. And if we're going to just focus on this continuing resolution, let's talk about it, because I know you just talked to my other colleague from Texas, and he was boasting about the increase in pay for certain service members while not talking about the fact that those that have already served our country, our veterans, that they're going to lose so much of their care. We know that right now they're looking to cut close to 80,000 people from the Veterans Affairs. And then in addition to that, in this CR, all the money for bills that we've passed before, specifically that extra money that we put in for the toxic burn pits, they want to take that out. So it should not be a either or when it comes to those that have served our country or those that are willing to serve our country. And right now they're pitting them against one another. We see as they've decided they're not going to do any more town halls. So I don't know if Tony even knows what his constituents want, that they are consistently getting railed against because of the way that they're treating veterans by making sure that these firings, they're not standing up for the people. They're not standing up for the House. So no, I'm not going to vote for the continuing resolution. The Republicans Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. If they want to get their draconian stuff passed that's going to hurt my constituents, they're going to do it by themselves.
And what's very worrisome is that so many veterans who work in federal government agencies are now being fired for various reasons as a result.
Approximately 1/3 of our workforce for the federal government, they're veterans.
Veterans, and we want to make sure those veterans are protected by all means. I want to play a little clip of what we heard from the House Speaker and get your reaction. So listen to this.
They're planning to vote down this simple bill. They are going to try to shut the government down. Every House Democrat will participate in this, it looks like. That would be a shame if it's true. I hope some of them will have a moment of clarity themselves and do the right thing, but it looks like they're going to try to shut down the government. It's a striking new posture for Democrats who have always said they've just been apoplectic about the prospect of government shutdowns.
You want to react?
Yeah, I'm going to say that we don't want the government to shut down. And frankly, this president has single-handedly not just been shutting the government down, but literally trying to dismantle it. And I haven't heard a word out of them. In addition to that, we know that we have been talking about impoundment, which is basically saying, hey, the power of the purse belongs to Congress. Well, guess what? Our speaker doesn't act that way. He doesn't get out there and say, hey, Mr. President, you can't do this. Once we've appropriated dollars, then these dollars are supposed to be for this. And one of the things that they're not talking about in this continuing resolution is the fact that they are going to give even more latitude. This is basically going to be a slush fund for Elon and Donald Trump. They are getting rid of the parameters around the spending. I think the comparison was that we have maybe 88 total pages of kind of whatever the parameters are for how the monies are to be spent, but the majority of the discretion goes to Trump and Elon, when we normally had, I think in our last one, typically we have about 2,800 pages.
We know there are a handful potentially of Republican House members who are going to vote against the continuing resolution, and that could torpedo it. But do you see a bunch of your fellow Democrats voting for it to keep the government open?
Not that I've heard. And you know what? It's interesting that the speaker knows how to call out my colleagues, but this is their bill. So why not call out your own colleagues, the ones that elected you to be their speaker? Listen, Nancy Pelosi didn't have these problems. So if they need some help, maybe you should tune into a woman, because maybe it just takes a woman to get it done.
Like you, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
And you're going to vote against the continuing?
I'm going to vote against it. Now, if they want to decide that they're going to start negotiating in good faith, remember our last continuing resolution? Remember, it was sunk because Elon decided to go on Twitter. And at this point in time, he had never graced the Oval Office. And so if this is how they want to govern, then you're going to have to get your own house in order. But you can't come to us and just say, here, take it. And we're supposed to say, yes, thank you so much for making us take it. That is not why we were elected. And we want the American people to see that these people cannot function. Wolf, you've been talking about a stopgap. Everybody's talking about a stopgap.
The continuing resolution.
The continuing resolution. But it's not a stopgap, right? Because for everyone at home, just know that our bills, when we do appropriations, they are for 1 year, right? And they go from September to September. This isn't a stopgap. They've not been able to pass their own appropriations bills out of the House in the entire year. And so now they want to do this all the way to September. They never would have passed appropriations.
I took notes of what the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, was saying, and he said this continuing resolution that's going to come up for a vote later today, which you will oppose, contains, he says, no cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security.
Yeah, so it is interesting that obviously we passed the budget resolution, or they passed the budget resolution that is going to require them to go into these cuts, but they've not got their single bills passed. We've got 12 specific kind of categories. And so for everybody at home, when you think about it, when you're paying your bills, you've got your electricity, you've got your house note, you've got that. So that's what we do. We have 12 separate bills, and they've not been able to pass those 12 individual bills. And in those, that is where they are prescribing for the cuts to those specific programs. Now in this, they are prescribing other cuts, such as they want to get rid of money that was in the Inflation Reduction Act, and they want to take back monies, obviously, for our veterans and things like that. So I don't know if they ever plan to actually go through the 12 single appropriations bills going forward. I mean, when you're passing a continuing resolution for the entire fiscal year, I don't know why they won't try to keep doing this. I don't know what they're doing.
Democratic Congressman Jasmine Crockett, thanks so much for coming in.